Hey there folks, I'm Tim Freitas from the Garden of English. Today it's time to begin at, well, the beginning. We're going to review all that you need to know about Unit 1 of the AP English Language and Composition course. This particular video is actually part of a larger review series that I've created for you. It's called the Garden of English's CED Guide for AP Lang students. The point of the materials that I've created especially for you is to help you better understand the course content, have another opportunity to learn, practice, and review course skills, and ultimately score higher both in your AP class and on your AP exam. The whole review guide I've made comes with guided notes, practice multiple choice questions, practice essay prompts, practice exams, exclusive Garden of English videos that will help you self-assess some of your work as you review for your exam, and it's even got resources that correlate AP Lang unit content and skills with content from the 9 APUSH units. So you can double dip on studying for both AP Lang and APUSH at the same time.
That's pretty slick.
What more could you actually want? Probably nothing, except for maybe a relaxing vacation in a tropical location, but only after you nail your AP exam. If you want all of these study materials, you can access the full Garden of English CED guide for AP Lang students in the link in the description below this video. You'll want to do that especially if you want the guided notes and practice questions that go along with this video. And if you sign up for the free trial, you're going to get all of Unit 1 for free. This is going to include the guided notes, the answers, the practice multiple choice questions and rationales, and even an entire set of guided YouTube video notes that will help you write your essays for the exams. That's really a lot, and it's all yours for free if you sign up. Okay, now that we've gotten all that free stuff out of the way, on to today's production. In order to succeed in AP English language, it's most important that you understand two foundational concepts of language and composition. The first is the rhetorical situation. I'm going to cover that in this video. The second is claims and evidence. I'll cover that in the Unit 1 video too. And remember, you can have free access to that by signing up at the link in the description. Now, before we can get into the rhetorical situation, we need to understand that the root of this phrase is the word rhetoric. Now, you may know some individuals who will, quite accurately, define rhetoric as discovering all available means of persuasion in any situation. That's Aristotle. Unfortunately, that definition doesn't really mean much to us in the 21st century. It's quite boring and it limits how we see rhetoric in our daily lives. Think about it. When you think about persuasion, you probably consider commercials and politics. Rhetoric is so much cooler than that. So the first thing we need to do is change that definition to not only help you make greater sense of the term rhetoric, but also give you the foundation for how you will read, write, eat, sleep, and dream about rhetoric in your future. Now, quite simply, rhetoric is using language to construct meaning. But we can't just think about language that is spoken or written. Language can actually be anything concrete at all. It's true. Just think about how many times you communicate with things other than actual words. Ever give one of these? Or how about the classic seagull salute? Yep, you've communicated. Thus, rhetoric is in action. By the way, when something is concrete, it just means that you can experience whatever it is with any of your 5 senses. Now, let's go back to that definition again for a second though, because we need to talk about the word meaning. Meaning is anything abstract. Well, what does that mean? What it means is that you need to channel your inner MC Hammer because
can't touch this.
Meaning is something that still exists, but you can't experience it with your senses. Rather, you experience it with your mind. But why is it so important to know this new definition of rhetoric? I'm going to tell you. In order to adequately identify, describe, analyze, and write about rhetoric, you must always address both concrete and abstract elements. If you neglect one or the other, you'll never grow in your rhetorical skills. The concrete and abstract must also always be paired together. I can't tell you how many times students have been able to identify a comparison, but haven't been able to tell me what the comparison means. Or how many times they've been able to tell me the audience was supposed to be upset, but couldn't tell me what was actually done to make the audience upset. Well, you don't have to be sad anymore because now we're going to get to apply this new conceptualization of rhetoric to the rhetorical situation. And this is where all rhetoric begins. The rhetorical situation is made up of the following components: context, exigence, speaker, audience, subject, though some individuals do put the word message here, and purpose. I do know that the AP Lang course and exam description, otherwise known as the CED, labels these components a little differently than I do, but I promise you that we're describing the same things. All I'm doing is breaking these concepts down a little bit more than the CED. I'm guiding you through. So really, I'm just making this easier for you to understand. Stick with me and you'll be golden. In order to go over over what you need to know about the rhetorical situation, I'm going to rely on Dwight Eisenhower's D-Day speech. At the time, he was the Supreme Allied Commander for the D-Day invasion. You can conveniently access this reading in the CED guide materials, or you can just do a quick internet search. Either will work fine. Now, let's start exploring the rhetorical situation by considering this word, context. Context is the general time, place, and occasion within which the rest of the rhetorical situation is placed. The key word here in this definition is general. When you discuss things generally, they're not quite as specific as when you are precise. In fact, things that are general are more abstract. Here is the first time we can see our new definition of rhetoric in action. Context will meet the qualities of the abstract part of that definition. Don't worry, we'll pair this with something concrete soon. What you need to learn to do in order to begin accurately interpreting and analyzing the rhetorical situation is to read for the general context in every piece that you experience. I have an easy tip as to how you can do this. While you read, look for the answer to these questions. When was the argument generated? Where was the argument generated? What are the socio-cultural backgrounds that influence the creation of the argument? The only way you're going to grow your rhetorical skills is by actually attempting to do this. That's why I've created this review guide so that you can practice with the best tips that I can give you. So when I direct you to answer questions about the speech, you'll notice that I created special sections on the guided note sheet where you can do this. So what I need you to do now is to pause the screen, read the Eisenhower speech, and then try to answer those context questions in relation to that reading. When you're done doing that, come right on back here and we're going to check out the answers. Okay, I'm going to assume that you paused, read the speech, attempted to answer each question, and provided textual evidence to back up your judgments. What? You didn't record textual evidence? I'm not surprised. I didn't tell you to. But you need to remember to do so from now on. If you are ever going to make a claim at any point in your life, you need to have evidence to back it up. And you can see more about this in the next Unit 1 video. Okay, now let's go over the reading and answers that you just completed. Oftentimes, just knowing when something was published can give you a good idea of what is or was going on in a broader sense when the writing was produced. I hope the date on the Eisenhower speech that we're using caught your eye. On your AP exam, dates of the publication will often be marked as well. Before even reading the speech, what do you know about that was going on in 1944? If you said World War II, you're in good shape. This gives us a wartime context. And since war is a broad idea, you can know that we're doing this right. Also, where was this argument generated? Although where gets a bit dicey here, because it's Allied troops, since most were Canadian or US or from the UK, we can generally apply the location as to being the West. And that's West with a capital W. So contextually, if we apply what we broadly know about international relations in that time, whatever the piece is about will probably contain biases against the Axis powers and promote Western ideals, such as liberty, bravery, and courage. Interestingly enough, because we are able to use our knowledge of the contextual time and place, we're actually able to easily answer the question about the socio-cultural backgrounds that influence the creation of the argument. Contextually speaking, there's a world war and the Allied side views the practices of the Axis powers to be in direct opposition of freedom, liberty, and peace. Now, go find a bunch of textual evidence that proves what I just said to be true. You can check your answers on the review guide sheet when you're done. Now, this is all well and good, but if we figure out the context, we've only dealt with the abstract. Didn't I say that to analyze rhetoric, we need to always pair the concrete and the abstract? You bet. This is where the word exigence comes in. Exigence can be defined as the event or events that prompt a speaker to make a claim. Metaphorically speaking, context is like rain clouds and wind, while exigence is like a lightning bolt. So if you're reading for exigence, here's the question you'd want to answer while reading so you can identify this rhetorical element. What has happened to make the speaker respond? This could be one event or multiple events. Pause the video here and try to answer this question based on the D-Day speech. When you do, remember to find textual evidence that proves your claims to be true. Here are some of the things that you may have noted. Nazis have oppressed people throughout Europe. An offensive operation has been planned to overthrow the Germans. The Germans have been militarily weakened. In the simplest sense, the exigence for this speech is the planned and upcoming attack against the unjust Nazi regime. If the offensive hadn't been planned, this speech wouldn't have been made. It's that simple. So context is the abstract and exigence is the concrete. I can point to a specific moment and reason why the speech was given. These two parts make up the background of the rhetorical situation. Once again, you must practice identifying both in all that you read, watch, and experience. The foundations of all rhetoric and rhetorical analysis reside here. But the rhetorical situation has other parts that we also need to explore. After identifying those concrete and abstract parts of the background information, you'll want to look into identifying and describing the speaker, both concretely and abstractly. Definitions first. The speaker is the entity making a claim. I use the word entity here because there are times, especially when it comes to marketing, that companies or organizations make claims. We don't want to make the mistake of thinking that identifying the speaker is just knowing the name of who is delivering the remarks. That's part of it, but not all. Don't forget, we have to explore the speaker's character. To concretely identify the speaker, you'll just want to ask, who is literally speaking? Yup, it's that simple. So why don't you pause the video here and answer that question about the D-Day piece. Now that you're back, if you put Dwight Eisenhower, you're good. By the way, did you document the textual evidence to back that up? I hope so. But now we have to dig deeper. The questions you need to ask in order to identify and describe the abstract character of the speaker are these. What character qualities does this speaker present? What does the speaker value? What is the speaker's background? What does the speaker believe? What constitutes the speaker's authority? Or why is the authority granted by the audience? Here you'll want to pause the video and answer as many of these questions as you can in the space that I've provided for you. Do not forget to document the evidence that backs up your claims. Okay, back and ready to check your answers? Here we go. What character qualities does this speaker present? Well, Eisenhower seems prepared, determined, confident, and hopeful. What does the speaker seem to value? Eisenhower seems to value liberty, valor, and victory. What is the speaker's background? Although only implied by the pronoun use in the speech, Eisenhower is in some sort of leadership position that paradoxically separates him from the soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied forces, yet allows him to also be fully immersed in this battle experience. Of course, we know that he's the Supreme General, but it's not specifically articulated in the language of the speech. Now, what does this speaker believe? Eisenhower seems to believe in the skill of his forces. He believes that freedom is worth fighting for and that the Nazis are dangerously oppressive. He believes the Germans are weakened and that the war is turned in the Allies' favor. And we also want to ask what constitutes the speaker's authority, or why is the authority granted by the audience? In this case, Eisenhower's authority is granted by his position within the armed forces. Now, do I expect that you recorded everything in detail that I also recorded when you do these exercises? No way! I've been doing this for a long time. But if you've been close to my answers or identifying any of these elements, then you're in really good shape. So, let's keep going. Now, we're going to address the concrete and abstract elements of audience. That's the next part of the rhetorical situation that we need to be able to read for. Again, definitions first. The audience is the individual or individuals that the speaker is directly attempting to reach. Yes, it's true that there are often secondary and tertiary audiences, but for our initial studies in rhetoric, let's focus on the primary audience. Here's the question we need to ask while reading to identify the concrete audience. Who is the speaker literally trying to reach? Try identifying the audience by name, age, location, or some other tangible demographic, if it's possible. So now that we have the question to read for, I want you to think about it, and I want you to think about the D-Day piece. And I want you to pause the video and answer that question. Okay, if you answered soldiers, sailors, and airmen of the Allied forces, you win. I hope you recorded your textual evidence. Are you getting sick of me saying that? If you are, just record your evidence. And now that we've recorded our concrete audience, we need to go further and look into the abstract qualities of that same audience. When you're looking for this, you can ask these questions while you read. What are the textually implied backgrounds of those listening? What are their textually implied values? What are their textually implied beliefs? What are their textually implied needs? And what are the textually implied collective character traits and qualities of all of those who are listening? By now, you should know the drill. No, not that one. I need you to pause, answer these questions in relation to this speech, document your evidence, and then come on back. Okay, here's my answer to these questions. The audience's background. Most of the soldiers are from the West. They are from free countries that value freedom from oppression. They most likely come from countries that have semblances of Judeo-Christian roots. And for the question, what are their values? These soldiers value liberty for oppressed people, even above their own lives. They value victory, courage, and devotion. For the question of what do they believe, they seemingly believe that the task will be hard, that the enemy is savage, and there are great reserves of fighting men. They probably believe that they have an advantage advantage over their enemy. And they also most likely believe that they are fighting for a larger cause and that their lives may be lost, but not in vain. They believe they're supported by the free world as well. And of course, what does this audience need? They need encouragement and a reminder that they are not alone, even when so close to battle. Now, what about when it comes to the collective character qualities of those who are listening? These listeners are uneasy yet determined. They are brave, liberty-loving soldiers. Okay, so there are two more parts of the rhetorical situation, and once we've covered those, you've completed a significant, meaningful Unit 1 review. Once you've practiced this, you'll be well on your way to a qualifying score. Let's talk about the word subject. Many times people call this next part of the rhetorical situation message, but I break that down into subject because it's actually easier to figure out the message when you do this. The subject of any discourse is the topic of whatever you're reading. To find the concrete subject of a piece, you just have to ask this question: what is the speaker actually talking about? Now, I want you to apply this to the Eisenhower piece. So pause the video here and answer it on your own. What is he actually talking about? This one should be easy. Pause it now. All right, ready to check your answer? Here it is. This speech is about the impending D-Day invasion. But what about the abstract subject? Well, here's the question that you're going to look to answer when you're trying to identify the abstract elements of subject. What underlying ideas, which may not be explicitly stated, exist or are explored within a piece? In this case, we're looking for universal ideas. Now, I'm not going to have you pause to answer this part of the subject because I want to make sure that I'm making myself clear. So I'm going to take care of this one for you. In this particular reading, Eisenhower is abstractly discussing things like liberty, courage, hope, skill, determination, confidence, security, and victory. You may have noticed that I didn't actually mention Eisenhower's message yet, and that's okay. The reason why is because it's easier to understand rhetoric when you tie an author's message to his or her purpose. So we're going to close things out with the rhetorical situation by discussing purpose together. As always, definitions first. Purpose is what the audience is supposed to understand, that's the message, and what the audience is supposed to do after experiencing a text or interaction. Understanding is abstract, doing something is concrete. So there we have it. It fits in with all things rhetorical. To figure out what the audience is supposed to understand, you need to ask this question while you read. What new understanding should an audience member have after listening to, or watching, or reading the piece? Now, the easiest way to identify and describe this understanding is by combining the abstract and concrete elements of our subject. Bam! Just like that! It's that simple. I want you to pause here, and I want you to try to construct Eisenhower's message to the troops by generating a sentence that combines some of the subject ideas with the concrete element of the D-Day invasion. You may want to start your sentence with the template that I have at the bottom of the screen right here. Let's see if what you wrote is similar to what I did. Eisenhower wants the Allied troops to understand that it's necessary for the security of the world that the impending D-Day invasion be victorious. Now, you may be asking, what about all the other ideas like liberty, hope, courage, and determination? Don't worry. These will be incorporated in the last part of our purpose, which is the do portion. You now need to answer the following question to finalize your understanding of the speaker's purpose. What should the audience do now that it understands the message from the speaker? So what is this in the case for these soldiers on D-Day? Now that they know it's necessary for the security of the world that the impending D-Day invasion be victorious, what should they do? Pause and answer that question. I hope your answer looks something like this. Once the Allied forces have confidence in the value of liberty, they will be determined to skillfully and courageously fight with confidence in their cause. You can now take your answers to the understand and the do and put them in the template that you'll see on the worksheet and at the bottom of your screen. If you were to write about the purpose of this piece, you could say, Dwight Eisenhower delivers his Order of the Day address in order to highlight how it's necessary for the security of the world that the impending D-Day invasion be victorious, ultimately moving the Allied soldiers to skillfully and courageously fight for liberty. In essence, here is the basic flowchart of the rhetorical situation. In the midst of historical context, an exigence arises and prompts a speaker to address an audience about a subject. Once the audience understands the message about the subject, the audience should then do something. And once done, the speaker will have achieved his or her purpose. We just laid the foundation for rhetoric, but from here on out, things should be smooth sailing. Just remember to practice reading and experiencing rhetorical moments with all of these questions in mind. It is foundational. And now, what you're going to want to do is check out the Unit 1 video 2 from the CED guide so that you can keep on learning. I'll see you there.